All right. Well, welcome back to Builders, Makers, Doers. I'm Andy Bassett. He's Elliot Bassett. I'm excited about today. We're here with Kory Anderson, owner and founder of Made by Anderson Brands, which includes Anderson Foundry as well as Iron Warrior. Also has quite a presence on social media and is significantly cooler than either one of us. But really excited to dive in. So
let's build off that. All right, Kory, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you guys doing? Good to be on here.
On location in Con Expo in Vegas.
I love it. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're down here at ConEx. So we've got a lot of customers in the construction equipment manufacturing business. So we're just down here meeting up with a lot of customers, checking out some final applications for some of the castings that we make, getting to see that in their products and at the final application. And so it's just, yeah, we're having a good time. 3 days down here, a lot of stuff to see. It's a massive show. There's just about 200,000 people that attend the show. Wow. So it's pretty packed.
That is amazing. I think wild, you said we were talking before we got on. Did you say like 3 million square feet of
display? Yeah. I mean, there's like 6 big buildings and a lot of outdoor lots, where just the big massive cranes and drilling rigs and stuff like that are outside, but it's huge. Lots of iron here in Las Vegas for this show.
Everything's bigger in Vegas.
Yeah, that is a fact. Well, thank you for joining us live from Vegas. So, we're excited to jump in.
Yeah. So, we talked a little bit about the show. You have multiple brands and things in the company that you've built over time, but, give us the 30,000 foot view for everybody listening that may not be familiar with Anderson Brands and you and what you guys are doing, so that we can give them a little perspective, and then we'll dive into how you got the business to where you're at and some of the things you guys are trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. So, basically, current state, our mission at Anderson Brands, we have kind of a twofold mission. The one is preserving American manufacturing and strengthening American manufacturing. And so that mission is where we have Anderson Foundries and Anderson Industries, which are our 2 manufacturing arms. And Anderson Foundries, we own Dakota Foundry and Muncie Castings, Iron Foundry and Aluminum Foundry inside of that. And so we're basically, through that entity, trying to preserve and strengthen manufacturing in this country and keeping foundry operations going. Foundries are basically the rawest form. You basically have foundries and steel mills. They're the 2 raw forms of making castings or making steel that can then be machined, fabricated, put into finished product. And so we've lost since 1950 about 90% of the foundries in this country. And so that's really our mission in Anderson Foundries, and in that side of things is preserving and strengthening that capacity.
Amazing.
Because it's really becomes a national security issue, when we lose too much of our manufacturing capacity. And, we actually have some customers, we do some Department of Defense work, and some of our bigger customers are key contractors for military equipment. And that's one of their biggest challenges right now, is just they're saying, hey, we're losing a lot of our capacity. We're having issues sourcing some of these castings, and anything military related has to be domestically produced, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so we're really seeing some issues in capacity and in just the loss of manufacturing that we have in this country. So on that side, we're really focused on preserving and strengthening our ability to build product here in America, and for the long term be able to say made in USA. And then on the other side, that's the Iron Warrior piece. So we have Iron Warrior. We also have a 501c3 nonprofit, the Iron Warrior Academy. And in that side of things, our mission is to fill the pipeline of primarily young men coming into the skilled trades. And so, we've lost a lot of our manufacturing capacity over the last 40 years in this country. And the result of that is we also lose a lot of the trades people in the industry. And, so basically since the 1980s, we've told kids that, you got to go get a 4-year degree to be anybody. And so now we've essentially lost 2 generations of people going into the skilled trades. And now we have the baby boomers, who are really the last prevalent, group in the skilled trades, all essentially retiring right now. And so we have a massive deficit. They're expecting by 2030 to have a deficit greater than 3 million people in the trades. So that's really on the Iron Warrior side what we're trying to solve. Our mission, as it sits right now, is to bring 100,000 young men into the trades by 2030. So we're really trying to make an impact there. We've shifted and adapted our approaches to scale at a greater level. Before, it was really kind of immersive cohorts and really hands-on. Now we're doing a lot more with online courses and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of at a high level.
Wow.
I mean, you said in the intro that he was a lot cooler than me. I mean, that's why.
Well, I mean, I think people talk all the time, and we hear infinite game. We hear, you look at a guy like Elon Musk, and you think about what his mission is, and these things are huge. This is a big mission that you just laid out. So, which is amazing. Walk through how you got into the business to begin with, and then when did it transition from just being in the business in a foundry to this mission?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually got started 20 years ago in 2006. I went to engineering college for 3 years, went up to NDSU and went to engineering school for 3 years. But at the same time I was going for mechanical engineering, I was working for a longtime mentor of mine, and he owned a welding and machine shop in Fargo, North Dakota. So while I was going to school, I was working essentially in a hands-on apprenticeship. And after 3 years, I just realized, man, I'm just learning so much more in the hands-on apprenticeship, working with guys who've been doing this for 30 plus years than I was in school. And so I actually dropped out of college, started my business in my garage in a town of 91 people in South Dakota. And I'm like, I'm gonna make it work. And a lot of the reason for starting my own business and pursuing this apprenticeship was I grew up in the preservation of history, like the steam tractors, old cars. My parents were really passionate about preservation of history. And so I grew up in that hobby and was surrounded by a lot of old timers, especially skilled tradesmen. And so I just had a good environment to really learn from some of these old timers. And so at the age of 22, I started Anderson Industries in my garage and took out a loan from the bank and bought a couple pieces of equipment and essentially initially went on the road fixing construction equipment because my garage wasn't big enough to really do a lot of work inside there. So did mobile welding and line boring, eventually started working with an iron foundry in Webster, Dakota Foundry. And I was having them cast parts for some of the restoration projects that we were doing in the steam engine hobby and the steam engine community. So a lot of these steam engines haven't been built for over 100 years. So there's no parts remaining. Yeah. And so I'd kind of gotten into the business of making replacement parts for friends in the hobby. And that's kind of how I got a connection to the foundry industry. But I just, grew my business after a couple of years, moved out of the garage into a factory in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and just started hiring people and started growing the business. And we really got into doing heavy welding and metal fabrication, producing a lot of agricultural type equipment, and grew the business, to over 100 people within like the first 8 years of being in business. And then in 2014, the foundry, Dakota Foundry that I had been working with, I had actually starting from my garage, I made some tooling for them, was basically making their patterns and tooling that they needed to cast parts for their customers. So I'd grown a strong relationship with those guys, and they became friends of mine. And I learned in 2014 that they were going to sell that business. And so that's when I was kind of faced with a tough decision, because I needed that foundry to eventually build this steam engine that I wanted to build, which was kind of a childhood dream to build the 150 case, which is the world's largest steam tractor. And I knew that I needed this foundry in order to cast the parts for this tractor. So cool. So I learned the Foundry was up for sale and wasn't a real positive future for outlook for that. And so I was basically faced with the decision of, man, do I buy this Foundry and keep it alive so I can cast these parts? And plus these guys are friends of mine, and I've really had a good relationship with them. So so I went back to the bank and took out a loan for $2.5 million and bought Dakota Foundry.
Wow.
Yeah,
And kept that business, kept things going there. And so that was kind of what got me into the foundry industry. And so at that time, I was in 2014, I was running Anderson Industries, which was metal fabrication, welding, machining, and we had operations near Fargo, North Dakota, and then in Aberdeen, South Dakota. And I was also the CEO and a third owner of the Horsch Company, which is a German-based company that manufactures seeding, tillage, and planting equipment. So I was standing up kind of the North American operation there with the German Horsch family, and then bought Dakota Foundry. So then I had essentially 3 different operations that I was running. And when I bought Dakota Foundry, we consolidated a lot of our operations into Webster because there was just a couple blocks away a building, big manufacturing facility that had opened up. So started consolidating things into Webster. And then, as I was about 2017, some of my, I grew up around a lot of older mentors and guys in the steam engine hobby who really, became business mentors, who became, just kind of life mentors. And I grew up listening to their stories about, perseverance, and a lot of them grew up in the dirty 30s, and, they just were extremely conservative. They just they had to actually survive, when they grew up. And just talk, stories of hard work and survival, and then they have this passion too for the preservation of American innovation and history, and these old steam tractors and cars. And so I really had a close connection with a lot of these guys, and they were starting to get older, and these guys were really the reason that I wanted to build this 150 case, this big tractor, was to, they had, if it wasn't for their mentorship, I would never have had the opportunity to get to where I was. And so I wanted to build this tractor in time for them to be able to, a lot of them to be able to see it and experience it, and basically build it as a tribute to the legacy and mentorship that a lot of those guys had given me. And
Cam is showing a picture of it now. It is amazing.
Wild.
Yeah. Yep. So in 2017, April of 2017, I basically decided, if I'm going to build this tractor, I just need to go all in 100% and put my time into building this and just get it done, and just, focus on it and get it done. So April 2017, I started building this tractor, and, still basically from remote, I was almost remote working before COVID made it a real thing. Right. And
Made it popular.
building this tractor. I actually built it at a friend of mine's place out in Sheridan, Wyoming, because I couldn't work on it too close to the, my operations. Otherwise you're just constantly interrupted. And so I had a really good friend in Sheridan, Wyoming. His name is Gary Bradley, and longtime mentor, steam friend of mine. He's like, let's just build this thing out at my place, and, I'll help you. And we can build it out here. And so basically for 18 months, a year and a half, I would engineer things, cast the parts in Webster. So I'd spend a week in South Dakota casting all the parts, then drive to Sheridan, Wyoming, about 9 hours, spend the next week machining the parts out at Gary's with him, and then just did that back and forth for a year and a half, and had a lot of great friends and people that helped in that project. But we basically completed that engine building, that tractor, 75,000 pounds of iron and steel. We built it from scratch in 18 months, and just working full time on it.
Talk about having
That's
a passion that carries something forward. That's amazing. A passion project, really, that seems to be kind of the fuel of what I think we'll get to here in a little bit when we talk about, that big mission and vision. But fascinating background, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And fun fact, I actually know right where you're at in Aberdeen. My mom's side of the family is all from Aberdeen area.
Absolutely. Nice.
Yeah.
That's
Not
awesome.
many people could probably be able to say that, but
Right.
we used to go there all the time as kids. So that's great. No, I think I love that background because it feels like you've always had somewhat of kind of a mission purpose mentality in your personality. And you've carried that obviously into, you set those two missions that you have, which I totally agree with you. And we see it all the time with our clients in the trades that one of their biggest things is finding skilled labor, finding suppliers. Everything you mentioned is a very real situation that we run into in the world we live in. And so kudos to you for taking on that challenge. And also, I think it's probably going to swing back around because you talk about AI and everything, and what it's targeting is everything that we do actually. And I think the trades are going to hopefully see a resurgence here. But tell us a little bit then about kind of where the company's at today. I mean, you mentioned a couple things in there. You brought it to 100 employees, et cetera, but give us a little bit more of that background of today. And then we want to get into some of the things from, that you experienced going from starting the company to where it's at today.
Right. Absolutely. So after completing, basically when I finished the 150 case project, that was a dream project that was kind of my North Star for, 25 years almost. Mm-hmm. And after completing that, then I was like, okay, well now I need a new North Star, right? I need like you mentioned, I'm very, very mission focused and needed to kind of identify, a new purpose, new mission, and get aligned with something else. And along the line, I had built these manufacturing companies, but I knew that it had to be more than just operating these companies.
Yeah.
And so in 2019, because of this tractor, actually, I was amazingly blessed to meet my now wife, Allie, at a STEAM show, who she came to see the tractor, and
wow.
We got connected. She actually thought I was a tourist and asked me. her intro line was like, "Hey, do you know who owns this tractor?" And so it was. I mean, we joke about how we met today, but basically that tractor brought us together. And I always joke that she thought my tractor was sexy. So
I love it.
Which I'm blessed for. But yeah, and so now we essentially jointly are just trying to drive these two missions forward. And she has a great experience with marketing and PR and branding, and so that's really helping us to increase the impact of what we're doing. So it just, I guess, where we're at today, in the Anderson Foundries side, we still have Anderson Industries, but our primary focus is foundry operations. That's our real passion. That's the real necessity that our country needs support in terms of American manufacturing. Like I mentioned, we'd lost 90% of the foundries since 1950. And so, there's a lot of, in Anderson Industries, what I had done up until, for like the last 20 years, there's a lot of fabricators, people with lasers, welders. That's a pretty, it's a lot to than foundry operations. So we kind of pivoted, recognizing, hey, the big need in this country is to not lose more of our foundry capacity, because we have less than 500 iron foundries in the United States left, and compared to 33,000 iron foundries in China. So wow. we can't lose more of these. And so that really, we kind of pivoted our focus to, let's focus on foundries, less on machining, welding, and fab, and focus on foundries and preserving this capacity. So we've just been, we had Dakota Foundry, which I bought in 2014. And the end of last year, I learned about another foundry in Muncie, Indiana, that was destined to be closed. And actually, when I called the owner up, I learned about him through the auction company, because he'd already contacted the auction company to close it. And so they contacted me, and they're like, "Hey, this foundry is going to close. might want to talk to the owner if you have any interest. And so I called him up, and he's like, you got 2 weeks to get down here, or I'm going to shut the plant. And so I got the next flight down to from South Dakota down to Muncie, Indiana, and looked at the plant. They had a great team, about 15 people, and a lot of them had been there for 15, 20 years, a good team of people, and good operation. Just, not many people understand the foundry industry, want to get into it. It's a lot of hard work, right? And the foundry industry it's a raw form of manufacturing. So it's hot, dirty, dangerous, not something that a lot of people are aspiring to get into. And so, yeah, we ended up buying and closing on that aluminum foundry in November of last year. And so that's really just kind of, right now we have Dakota, which is an iron foundry, Muncie, which is an aluminum foundry. And so at Dakota, we supply a lot of like construction equipment manufacturers, power transmission, everything that's kind of heavy industrial. And then at Muncie, where we have the aluminum castings, there we're supplying a lot of automotive and aftermarket racing components, which is kind of a totally new industry for me. I've never been too much into drag racing, Formula One, kind of that aftermarket high performance aluminum stuff. But I mean, we make everything from aluminum blocks, heads, manifolds, intakes, all that type of stuff at Muncie. So it's fun for me, just being an innovator and a guy who's passionate about building stuff, to kind of get to pivot into some of these different industries, learn the markets, and so that's where we're at today with Anderson Foundries. And our mission, we're just always on the watch for essentially the next operation that's unfortunately, destined to close, and hopefully something that we can come in and preserve and keep going. So
on that because that's fascinating. That's an incredible mission. It's making a difference. So Muncie, specifically to that one, because you go in, you acquire, I realize it's relatively recent, being, I think you said last November, but like, how do you go, what maybe, because I think a lot of the audience is going to be entrepreneurial in nature. So they're going to look for opportunities for acquisitions and for things like this, but maybe tell us how, when you went in and you acquire, like, what's that resurrection process look like? Like, how are you having success taking something that was literally going to go to auction and close its doors? You come in, you've got to get capital, you got to put risk down to buy this thing. Like, what's that look like to resurrect it, or what are you doing to create success?
Yeah. So this is something we're actually planning to kind of pivot and turn into essentially a playbook and start an operation where we're going to call like manufacturing rescue. And so not necessarily where we may go in and purchase the company, but companies in that situation might be able to bring my wife, Allie, and I in, and, we do a few-day assessment, help them kind of game plan. This is what we need to do to make this company more valuable if they're looking to sell, or just keep it alive and get it turned around to making money if it's a bleeding situation. But so what we did, the first thing we do is we go in and install systems. So making sure that we have a good system in place where we can actually evaluate the cost of goods, the expenses, and specifically in a foundry, we're selling products or selling castings. So we need to identify right away, hey, are we making money or losing money on every single one of these jobs? And if we're losing money, then we got to go back to the customer and negotiate a situation of a price increase or whatever that looks like. But so the first thing is installing systems to where we can really get into the details and the data of where do things need to be fixed as soon as possible. And alongside that, kind of in parallel at the same time, we're immediately making connections with every single one of the team members and identifying, trying to inspire them and motivate them. And, when we come into a situation specifically like Muncie, where these guys knew that they were essentially going to lose their jobs, I mean, it was very emotional within that team on the day that we did the closing. We actually had it, the closing day, we did a pizza party and provided lunch for everybody. And you just kind of gave them a vision for what we wanted to see and do in the company. And there was a lot of those guys that got emotional, and they're like, you saved our jobs, and we're just forever, we're indebted to you for that. We were destined to have lost our jobs. And so, I mean, it's really cool and fulfilling to get to see that. And so both Allie and I are we're extremely passionate about having close connections to our team. And so we just try to get to know everybody, their strengths, weaknesses, and where there's future opportunities, getting them positioned into the right roles, and then just installing a leadership structure within that operation for making that successful. And then, at the same time, basically meeting with key customers. And so with the Muncie acquisition, it was really fortunate for us that there's a big racing show in Indianapolis. It's called the PRI show, but like performance racing show in Indy. And so a lot of our customers were, a month after we had closed on Muncie, a lot of our customers are at that PRI show. So that was a great opportunity for us to, we went to the PRI show and got to meet a lot of our existing customers kind of all in one place. But that's always a huge priority for me anytime we've done an acquisition. Even back in 2014 when I acquired Dakota Foundry, the VP of operations who was running the plant for me at that time, him and I immediately got in the car and we just drove out and met all of our key customers and made introductions. And I think one of the biggest priorities in these situations is you want to install stability within the team and within the customers as fast as possible, right? Because companies who are in a situation where they're either going to be acquired or they're in an acquisition or they're potentially going to be closed, there's a lot of uncertainty within both the team and in the customer base. And so one of the biggest, most important things is installing, confidence and stability and communicating a long-term vision so that everybody feels secure in the path forward.
Yeah.
So we do system improvements, and then we, get that stability within the team, within our customer base. And then my wife, Allie, is just an absolutely phenomenal designer of, experience and space. And so like what she does is she comes in, and we're in the middle of a number of these projects at Muncie now, since we just acquired last November. But she comes in and she's like, okay, we need to upgrade the break rooms, the bathrooms, all of these, wherever our employees are going to be, wherever our customers are going to be. Like, this stuff needs a total makeover and basically a transformation of the environment, because that has a huge psychological impact to the team members and also to customers when they come in to see a transformation, a visual transformation like that. And so that's kind of the four main pillars.
Wow.
Is, getting the systems in place, making sure so that you have to have data, especially in manufacturing and in any business, even like you guys. I mean, data drives the right decisions, right? And so getting a system in place, having the data, analyzing data, fixing issues that you recognize from there, building stability within the team, within the customers, and then that just environmental transformation that will have a impact on everybody who's part of that experience.
A lot of good takeaways.
I resonate with that a lot.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah. So, and that's only one side though of what you're doing. You mentioned a couple others, which I want to make sure we tell everybody listening about what you're doing there too. So talk to us a little bit about Iron Warrior. And I know that not only is that utilizing your businesses to create the products, but then you're doing a lot of cool things with bringing people into the industry and stuff. So talk to us a little bit about that side of the company, because I want to make sure we don't run out of time there.
Definitely. So on the Iron Warrior side, I guess where that concept kind of initiated was back when I was running Anderson Industries. We had a big demand for specifically welders at that time. And so I was in Aberdeen. We have, Aberdeen's a decent sized community, but there is a limited number of welders in that community. Mm-hmm. And so we had hired essentially as many that existed there that we could hire. And then it's like, how do we get more welders in a community where we don't have a huge population to choose from? And so we had started looking for young people who had a strong character, where they had discipline, they had integrity, and they had a strong character foundation. And we just said, let's just bring them in, zero experience, and we'll put them in a training program to teach them how to weld, and we'll just see how fast we can actually create and develop our own welders to help supply this pipeline. And what we found was that when we found people that had the right character foundations, we could actually turn them into a welder in 2 months or less, and have them performing as good or sometimes even better than guys who had years of experience. And so that's what kind of initially triggered in me, like, hey, there's got to be a connection here, and something that we need to continue to develop. But I never really had time to. I kind of always been processing this vision and like, hey, we need to create something. But really, until I met my wife, and Allie and I we're both working on this together, that's when we really started to pivot and shift and put effort into creating the Iron Warrior Academy. And we initially started with a really hands-on, immersive. So when we started, we wanted to focus on both the character side and some of the skill development. And so if you imagine like an apprenticeship meets a military boot camp combined, that's kind of what we were running. So it was, daily PT, 6 a.m. We're getting up and we're running and doing, outside doing PT with these young guys. Then we go into the shop, spend a whole day in the shop, teaching them iron foundry, teaching them some welding basics, teaching them machining. And then at the end of the day, it's PT. And then we were actually doing some, like hand-to-hand defense training, medic training, first responder stuff, just kind of giving them a whole array and over a course of 3 days into a lot of skill and character development. And that was awesome. And we loved doing that. We realized just actually last year, we realized, hey, this number of deficit continues to grow. it starts at 1 million, and then it's 2 million. And every month it's like, now it's 3 million that we're going to be short by 2030. And now AI is coming in, and AI is adding so much more demand to skilled trades, because that means our whole electrical infrastructure and all these data centers need to be built, and you got to build them with electricians and HVAC and concrete and construction. And it's all now they're just, so it's like, hey, we can't support this doing classes of 6 to 8 guys at a time. We need to scale this to something that's going to really help be an impact to bringing to filling this gap and bringing skilled tradespeople back into America and infrastructure. And so we've been developing it's an 8-week online course. And basically the mission now is pivoted a little bit from teaching both character and skills to, we want to target actually younger men in high school yet primarily, and introduce them, give them exposure and learning about the opportunities they have in the skilled trades, because that's, I feel, where a lot of that gap is. We've, in a lot of high schools, we've lost the tech, the tech classes, the auto, the woodworking, a lot of that stuff used to be, when I was in high school, a lot of that stuff was there. But after I left, some of those classes had gotten removed, and in a lot of schools, those have been removed in the 2000s. So we're not even giving kids exposure to these opportunities. And so our focus now is creating an online program that really teaches the mental toughness, the grit. So we're trying to build stronger young men, essentially, who are going to be geared mentally, physically, and spiritually for the skilled trades. And so we're taking them through an 8-week program where it's a lot of character development. And then there's an assessment that will evaluate based on their, cognitive discipline, all of those things. What is the best trade potentially for them based on, math, science, mindset, mental toughness, grit, all that stuff? Is this a electrician? Is it a plumber? Is it a welder? Is it what type of trade path aligns ideally with this person? And then once they graduate, so we will have a qualification. So we'll run a lot of these kids through an online class. Then they come to every quarter an immersive qualification, which is going to be a physical test, a physical assessment, a mental toughness, teamwork, leadership, all of these things they get evaluated on. Then they become Iron Warrior qualified. Then we help them find the next pipeline. And so whether that's a trade school where they have to, if they're going into a electrician, for example, where they need accreditation, they need a certification, and there's an actual process where they have to go, we'll connect them to those trade schools. A lot of them will just end up going into apprenticeships and paid apprenticeships, most likely. So we have tons of industry partners who are looking for all sorts of different tradespeople. And basically we can just say, hey, if, wherever you want to be, we probably have an opportunity for you wherever you want to be in the US, and just aligning opportunities and apprenticeships and internships with those students to help them just get on that path and continue to move forward. And so we're really just trying to, inspire young men, teach them the skill sets and the mindsets to be equipped for physical work, for hard work, to be providers for their future family, to take ownership and responsibilities and all of that, and then putting them on the path. And that's really our mission. So we're trying to fill the pipeline and getting them on the path to where they're going to be ultimately the most successful that they can be.
Wow,
so that's
amazing. Yeah,
that's the Iron Warrior side of things. And then along with that, we have basically a next tier, which we call the Millionaire Tradesmen, and that's tradespeople who are already in the skilled trades. So imagine a guy who's been a plumber for 10 years and he becomes an expert plumber, and he's like, hey, this is something I think I can do on my own. I want to start my own business, right? I'm one of the best around, and one of the best on my team and my company, and I want to try entrepreneurship, and I want to start my own company. So that's where we're basically taking people who are already in the skilled trades and giving them essentially a blueprint to starting your own company and expanding your business and creating a company, setting it up, all of the different things that you have to learn, the skill sets and that to become an entrepreneur in the skilled trades and to be successful there. Because a lot of the skilled trades we're going to fill this deficit, not by having huge companies with thousands of trades workers. It's going to end up being, and you guys know, if you've ever had, everybody's had some housework done, remodeling, different projects. It's usually the smaller crews where the owner is heavily involved. Like those are usually the ones that do the highest quality work in a lot of cases, right? And so I feel like growing more of these, these trades owner pods is really how we continue to support the needs of the growth in construction and everything, manufacturing in this country.
Wow. Well, and I know I don't have to tell you this or even our audience, but that is massively needed.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, we talk to a lot of businesses in the trades, and what you're doing there is solving for undeniably the biggest problem across the trades right now, which is how do we get people into and interested in it, and how do we accelerate it? That's fascinating what you said earlier about being able to bring people in without a background and get them up and running in such a quick period of time. And so,
right.
And then the entrepreneurial piece, like you said, people that are already in it, but want to figure out how do they take the next step to have their own. And so I can't commend you enough for that vision and mission and how much that is needed across the industries, the trades as a whole, because it's a significant problem, and it's awesome to see somebody's out there trying to solve it. So
yeah, well, thank you guys. And to your comment, like the speed, that's really what we're focusing on with the Iron Warrior side, is how do we get connected with a young man in high school, and by the time he's 18, he's already starting on that path, whether it's an apprenticeship or, because we don't want to have these guys have to go to a bunch of, school and further education where that might not be the right path for them. And then now we're waiting until they're 22, 24, whatever, to get into the workforce and now they're, in a lot of cases, they go the 4-year route. Now they've got $100,000 of student debt. They can't afford to do anything. And now they're just working for the next 10 years to try to get their feet back under them. We want to try to get these young men when they're in high school, teach them about this opportunity. And by the time they're 18, they're already just off and running. And by the time then they're 22, they're already successful and very experienced in the trades. And, potentially within a few more years, they're ready to even maybe some of them start their own business, by the time some of their friends are just getting out of college,
with a lot of debt.
Yeah. And
right. Yeah.
They're able to be productive and make good money. I mean, that's the other thing. You can make great money in the trades right now. And I think some of it is just helping younger people understand that this is an okay path. It's a great career path. And it's almost like over the last couple of decades, it's been like, you have to go to college. And if you're going to make something of yourself, it's got to be a 4-year degree and all this just nonsense, really, when you think about it, when there are great opportunities in all of the skilled trades. And, we see it in the clients we work with every day, but just kudos to what you're doing. It sounds like you definitely keep yourself busy, that's for sure. But we've covered a lot of ground, and I think this is going to warrant probably a part 2.
I think it is too.
There are so many parts that I want to dive into, much more detailed, but I think everybody's going to take away a lot from your story and what you guys are trying to do. But with that, we're coming up on kind of the closing up the show here. Is there, if you could be talking to the listeners out there and just telling them anything that you think, would be valuable to them based on your experience, what you guys are trying to do. Again, we're talking to business owners and leaders in, the industries that are building things, making things, and doing things. So what's kind of your parting words for the audience?
Yeah, I would say, specifically for the business owners and entrepreneurs out there, one of the biggest challenges that we all have today, and I'm sure everybody's in this same boat, and this is something that has changed significantly over the last 20 years that I've owned businesses, is that, it is more critical now than ever to have, good processes in place and good training, and taking the time and looking for the younger people within your teams, or the opportunity to find younger people that you can really train, mentor, and develop. And I feel like mentorship has kind of became a thing of the past almost. I was fortunate to have grown up with a lot of great mentors, but it's very rare that you find young people anymore who have a mentor who's not, a social media influencer or somebody that they're just following on social media and saying, this is how I want to live my life. So I think it's really important that, we, as especially entrepreneurs who have experience, we do, identify those people in our lives that we can mentor and train and create opportunities. And especially within our team, man, we just have to be much more intentional right now about building strong team members and investing in them. And it is definitely a lot more challenging. There's just the less people out there, in the workforce today than there used to be in a lot of industries, and also just different challenges and demographics that we have to coach around. So I would say that, and then anybody who has young people who are growing up, and primarily young men, to have them, if they're not geared to be a doctor, lawyer, whatever that might be a requirement to go to college and university, would be to encourage them to look at the skilled trades and, identify some opportunities in there. Because I fully believe that the trades is going to be a a huge revolution. It's really a branding problem, like you guys kind of mentioned earlier. It's a branding problem now that has been created over the last few decades. But now it's a we're intentionally. I mean, I wear bib overalls every day, intentionally trying to position and change this brand. And money follows supply and demand, right? And there's nothing in higher demand in this country right now than trades workers. And so there's going to be massive opportunity for people who are willing to learn a skill and are willing to learn hard. And if they want, there's going to be, the nice thing about the trades is it's an endless opportunity. Any trade that you learn, you can start a business and you can serve people. There's no essentially limitations to where you can go as long as you're willing to continue to put in the work. So,
well, it'd be hard to say it better than that.
Yeah.
And I think you hit a key thing there is the brand and what you're doing with Iron Warrior, what you're doing with some online presence. I mean, you are shifting that brand, and I hope people see it. We'll do our best, to get that out there as this podcast goes live. I think to Elliot's point, a part 2 is going to happen at some point because it's clear you're doing some amazing things now, and it's only going to get even cooler with what you're doing. So that was a ton of fun. I think there's a lot for people that listen to the pod to take out of it. And, it was fun for us to listen. Yeah, man, we appreciate the heck out of it. And we certainly look forward to the second time, and who knows where you'll be, Vegas this time, who knows where we catch you next time.
Right. Definitely. Well, yeah, appreciate you guys, just having me on and helping to, spread awareness of the missions that we're doing. Really appreciate that, and appreciate the work that you guys are doing and helping to share these stories and encourage your audience and bring them value. So this is really awesome. You guys are doing a really good thing and cool thing here, and absolutely honored to have been with you guys for past roughly hour, and look forward to round 2 whenever that comes.
I love it.
Awesome.
Until next time, they say.
Thanks,
all right. Thank you.